It's not my life. It's not my life. It's theirs.
All right, I think it's doing something.
Should we just film it then?
Hello.
Turn it around.
Yeah.
No, because it's for some reason. Is it saying it's live?
Yeah,
But
but
it's not filming you.
Huh?
It's not filming you. It's filming us.
Turn the camera around.
yeah.
Yeah.
There
Now it's
we
filming
go.
you.
But are you actually filming that?
I'm going to go to my iPad.
One person watching apparently.
You're in.
Am I in it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but Jess, if it's
Hi, hello. I hope this is filming live on YouTube, but if it's not, I'm going to get my iPad out and film it anyway, and I'll be putting it on this afternoon. So thank you for coming to another Brisbane Speakers Corner event. I want to say a big thanks to Leah for doing all the police liaisons for us. Now, I don't know if you realised yesterday was Magdalene Byrne's birthday. And the American ladies over there started a little event. And I want to add to that today, and this was Thank a Turf. For Magdalene's birthday, once a year we're going to thank a turf. So I'm going to start first with thanking Kelly J. Keane, because her format is just the bomb. She lets every woman speak, and I don't think we can go past that. The fact that there's no hierarchy, anybody is welcome to the phone, the microphone. So firstly, thank you. Thank you, Turf, Kelly and Chip. Secondly, I want to thank Rex Landy, because she is a personal friend of mine. She's the bomb, and she reminds me that we don't have to have any fucks on this to give. So thank you, Rex. Never surrender. And the other, I want to thank all our Brisbane Turfs. I want to thank Edie White. I want to thank Sal Grove. I want to thank Leah. I want to thank Mary Jones. I want to thank Jessie. I want to thank all of them, because without all these ladies, we wouldn't be doing these events. So from that, I'm going to drop this mic and I'm going to pass it on. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So I want to take you on a wild and depressing ride through the world of the Australian Breastfeeding Association. So, exclusive, astonishing moment. Transgender paramedic who was born male breastfeeds his newborn baby after wife gives birth. As critics say, only women can produce milk. There will be a lot of misgendering happening in the next 5 minutes. Jennifer Buckley was born male and began transitioning to a woman in 2017. He froze his sperm and conceived a son with his wife, who gave birth in 2019. An endocrinologist suggested that Mr. Buckley tried to produce his own breast milk. Took drugs to make his breasts grow and was able to pump milk from them. Mr. Buckley says he fed his son when his wife couldn't produce milk. And the story goes, a man has described how breastfeeding his baby an hour after his wife gave birth to the boy made him feel more feminine. Brisbane paramedic Mr. Buckley was warned by doctors against trying to nourish his newborn son from his own chest, but he went ahead anyway. We've got some... Being a man, I can't carry. It's one of the limitations of it all, he told the Daily Mail. To know that I could breastfeed my own child and have that experience, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to know what it was like to be a mum and to breastfeed. The controversial practice has been criticised by specialists as experimental and unethical, but Mr. Buckley believed he had the right to breastfeed his infant. The 41-year-old would never be able to carry his own baby, but began medically transitioning to a woman in 2017 after years of feeling that he was female. Before the transition, Mr. Buckley froze his sperm, which was used to conceive his baby, with his wife, 35, who gave birth in 2019. I will never know what it's like to menstruate or carry a baby or give birth, Mr. Buckley said. But to be told I could have the opportunity to breastfeed, it was something that was nice, and it was nice to be able to experience that as a man. Mr. Buckley said that his endocrinologist had suggested he try to produce breast milk a couple of months before his wife gave birth. I never thought it would be possible, he said. I jumped at the opportunity. Mr. Buckley said his wife was completely supportive of his wishes while she was pregnant, and that his milk was meant to supplement his baby's supply. After consulting with his endocrinologist, Mr. Buckley upped his estrogen to mimic pregnancy and started taking drugs. Mr. Buckley then began using a breast pump to induce milk, which he then later froze. The first time it came out, I just started leaking, Mr. Buckley said. I pumped, and it was a weird feeling having a suction cap suck out milk, but it was really exciting. I thought, oh my God, I'm actually producing human milk. Mr. Buckley then said he breastfed his baby just an hour after his birth, while his wife was being treated for hemorrhage. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, he said. I'd only been transitioning for a year and a half. My breast development hadn't been completed, and it was harder than I thought it would be to get him to latch on. Mr. Buckley said when doctors at the hospital learned he was trying to breastfeed, he was warned that it could put his newborn at risk. The doctors asked him to sign a waiver and wanted to see documentary evidence of his blood infection status. It goes on and on like that. It's just really disturbing to actually read about. But any woman who has ever breastfed knows that apart from being an absolutely amazing and joyful bonding experience, it can also be painful, emotional, and absolutely at times bloody inconvenient. But as we know, there is no female bodily function that some men won't claim for their own perverted sexual fetish. Apart from the stomach-churning idea of a man with a lactation fetish, how the fuck is this allowed to happen? Why have the priorities of ethics and child safeguarding been replaced with the desire to affirm men's sexual fetishes and gender identities? I don't care what names I get called or how many of my old friends will no longer speak to me. I had all that in high school. It really doesn't bother me. All the while this continues, and all the while I have air in my lungs, I will continue to call out what I see as complete child abuse. Institutionalised child abuse. Anyone involved in the Australian Breastfeeding Association who either goes along with this shit or doesn't call it out should be absolutely ashamed of themselves, and that is why I'm speaking out. Okay, who's next?
That's on.
Yeah.
I am a woman, a mother, a grandmother of 6 grandchildren, and I refuse to be labelled by gender zealots as hateful, transphobic, a bigot, a Nazi. What garbage. How pathetic. I have spent my life caring, working in preschools, raising my own 3 children, and also caring for my mother in her last years of life. And now I care for my grandchildren. How dare gender extremists lie about me and the other women here? We are women. We are not hateful. We are carers, nurses, young pregnant mothers, dancers, students, animal rescuers, teachers, tuck shop ladies, artists, netball coaches, and community volunteers. These fanatics have no right to disrespect us as as women and our contributions to society. It's unbelievable that in Queensland in 2023, women gathering to speak on issues and laws that will impact our rights and the rights of our daughters and granddaughters are met with this. Trying to shout us down. Actually, I wrote this thinking that they were going to have a massive protest. So if you peer, you may be able to see them. Trying to shout us down. To bully and intimidate us into silence. If men in dresses feel uncomfortable in men's toilets and sports, it is not our problem. Why are they not outside men's toilets demanding safety to enter? Why are they not at sporting clubs shouting to be accepted in male teams? Why are they not outside boxing clubs shouting trans rights are human rights? Do that, or else fight for your own spaces and facilities. Instead, they are here trying to harass women. Women who are asking for nothing more than to retain our hard-fought-for rights to single-sex spaces where we feel most vulnerable. We want women-only toilets and change rooms.
Yes, we do. Yes.
We want safety and fairness in women's sports. We do not want men in women's prisons, no matter how they identify, as identities do not rape women, male bodies do. We do not want any man housed with women victims of sexual assault, domestic violence and homelessness. They are the most vulnerable in our society and must be protected from any further trauma. We are women. We women are determined. We stand shoulder to shoulder. We will hold the line and we will speak.
Hey, can you hear me, guys? I live in the northern suburbs of Brisbane. My name's Heather. I got involved in this when the state Labor government here started pushing through self-ID through the Queensland Parliament using stealth and secrecy. I made a submission to the Parliamentary Committee. I wrote to my local member, Mark Ryan, MP, around 45 times. And the Attorney General's Department around 5 times. I sat through the Legal Affairs and Safety Committee proceedings. I eventually got a meeting with my local member after 47 emails. What happened at that meeting is that Mark Ryan told me to my face there was literally nothing I could show him or tell him that would change his mind about voting in favour of self-ID. He's the Minister for Corrections and he doesn't know what a woman is. And he refused to answer any questions about men being held in the women's estate currently. He even asked me why I cared so much about women in prison, as I was unlikely to ever find myself there. I was pretty shocked by that, and I said, actually I care because I'm a human being, Mark. I thought that living in a civil society we were supposed to care for the most vulnerable among us, and women in prison are vulnerable. Not according to Mark Ryan though, who stated that no women in Queensland jails were in prison for minor offences such as non-payment of fines or drug addiction. He said they were all violent people. These are the words of our Minister for Corrections. He also went on to say that every woman in the Queensland correctional environment had her own cell with a cubicled toilet and shower. He made it sound like the Plaza Hotel. He also said he had no idea of the recent happenings in Scotland, in particular the case of our meaty rapist, Adam Graham. I told him I was shocked that he wasn't abreast of recent cases in similar jurisdictions. That it seemed to me that should be his job. He then had two assistants enter the room and tell me my time was up and that I had to leave. I hadn't finished my questions. He cut my time short. He refused to meet with me again, a member of his electorate. I recently received a written response from Ms. Fentiman, the Attorney General herself, in which she misrepresented the consultation process. This process was curated by the government with zero consultation with real stakeholders. Women were ignored and locked out of the process entirely, as were organisations representing children, families and the LGBT community. They said there was no evidence of harm from any other jurisdictions, either overseas or in Australia, that self-ID would have a negative, unforeseen impacts. They were presented with reams and reams of evidence of harm, and they're playing a very dangerous game of willful pretend. Nobody wants this legislation. Half of the LASIK committee even voted against it. The Labor government hasn't conducted any widespread polling on the issue outside of the trans lobby, nor conducted any kind of community impact assessments. They pushed it through when everyone was on Christmas holidays because they knew it would be unpopular and they wanted no debate. This is disgusting behaviour by the government, who has now shown us the danger of special interest groups being able to push through legislation without community consent or popular mandate. I asked Mark Ryan, what happens when the right are in government? What if they tried to bring back prayer into public schools and had secret, targeted consultations with religious groups and locked out secular organisations? Labor would lose their mind. So congratulations, Labor and the Greens, because this will now be a blueprint for any nefarious political actors wishing to push through special interest legislation. Shame on you and your corruption of a democratic process. I still have no answers from the government on my burning questions, especially regarding same-sex intimate care. All I wanted, Mark, Shannon or Anastasia, was for you to tell me, a disabled woman, who gets to decide who touches my body. I'll give you a little hint, Shannon, Minister Ryan, there's only one right answer. That's me. And only me. How many girls should have to share their facilities with teenage boys at school? None. How many men should be held in women's prisons? None. How many people have ever successfully changed sex? None. And none. How many men and boys should be playing in our sports? None. How many penises should little girls be exposed to in change rooms? None. These are not difficult questions to answer. Shame on the Queensland government. Shame on Mark Ryan. Shame on Attorney General Shannon Fentiman, Anastasia Palaszczuk as well. Women do not consent and we are not going away. This is a record of our dissent. We won't forget who did this to us.
Okay, so I'm going to actually, we always hear about the genital fetish. Lesbians nowadays have a genital fetish. Gay men these days have a genital fetish. Because apparently we have to believe there's such thing as lady dick. Right? Now here's the thing, right? Contemplating this over a few years of my life, because I'm a young lady, well, I identify as a young lady anyway. So I'm 47, right? And I've contemplated how many women, including straight women and gay women, have flashed me in a dressing room. Like really flashed their genitals at me. Like, I'm not calling breasts, I'm calling full genital flashing. How many? Fucking none. Not one. Because in order to do that, a woman would have to sit on the ground with her legs apart and open herself up to flash. Or she would have to bend over backwards and spread herself apart in order to flash. Now, here's the thing with your fucking lady dick. You just have to take your pants down, lovely, and you're flashing. Here's the other thing with your goddamn unicorn that is a lady dick. Because they both exist, right? Yeah. Here's the other thing. If my little girl's in there, my 14-year-old granddaughter, I can tell whether you're sexually attracted to her or not, because like the unicorn's magic horn, it makes itself fucking known.
Yes.
Now, I've never once been in a room with my lesbian sisters that I have been flashed and that I go, holy shit, that bitch is attracted to me. Not once, because it is anatomically impossible for a woman to flash another human being unless they've got their legs apart. And that is not the same for lady dick that doesn't exist. We can see it. We can tell. Okay, yeah, you're not attracted to an old crone like me, but who gives a shit? Because I can tell you're attracted to my daughter. I can tell you're attracted to my underage granddaughter. I don't want your lady dick. What an oxymoron anyway, hey? Like, honestly, we're going to talk about language that you cannot have because women belongs to us. You can be ladies if you want to be designated ladies, but women is off limits. So I am taking someone in who wants it, or I'll rant all day.
I'm going to read out something else because I haven't come up with my own speech yet. So this is for our little group of counter-protesters over there, the pathetic group, who have the, I'm pretty sure that's the LGBT ally flag, although the trans colours aren't there. So I'm going to read out this article if you're an ally, so you can listen to this. Okay. Here's the article, heading, Pediatric trans care is often conversion therapy for gay children.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what it says. There's clear evidence that in many cases, paediatric gender identity services amount to conversion therapy for homosexual children. Young gay children, particularly effeminate boys and masculine girls, are being pressured into falsely identifying as transgender, thereby transing away the gay. Evidence of this phenomena overwhelmingly comes from the United Kingdom, where the country's sole publicly funded paediatric gender clinic is being shuttered and replaced. Investigators found that this clinic, colloquially referred to as Tavistock, provided youth with grossly irresponsible care. Tavistock's homophobic practices were first made public in 2019 when an investigative report published by The Times featured several former clinicians who noted that paediatric gender care sometimes feels like conversion therapy for gay children. The clinicians claimed that homophobia was commonplace at the clinic, and additionally that parents seemed to support medical transition because they would rather have a child who was straight and trans than gay. The British press subsequently published several reports exploring these claims. In response, some trans activists have said that allegations of homophobia and conversion therapy are untrue, but these activists are wrong. In February, BBC investigative journalist Hannah Barnes released a book, Time to Think, which used interviews from almost 60 Tavistock clinicians to investigate the clinic's implosion. The book has been lauded by both conservative and progressive newspapers for its meticulousness and fairness. Barnes's reporting definitively shows that Tavistock was brimming with homophobia. Clinicians spent almost a decade trying to raise alarms about the issue but were ignored. The core problem was the clinic's affirmative approach to treating trans-identifying youth. Under an Affirmative model of care. If patients say they are transgender, clinicians are expected to simply support that self-diagnosis. In practice, that usually means ignoring other crucial factors, such as mental health and sexual orientation. Gender nonconformity can indicate transgenderism, but it can just as easily indicate homosexuality. Many lesbian, gay and bisexual LGBT youth don't fit gender stereotypes, but this perfectly natural behaviour has been weaponised against them to strip them of a right to feel comfortable in their own bodies. Dr. Natasha Prescott, a Tavistock ex-clinician, told Barnes there is increasing concern that gender affirmative therapy, if applied unthinkingly, is reparative therapy against gay individuals, i.e. by making them straight. Barnes described how internet communities pressured patients into thinking that their gender nonconformity meant that they were transgender. This was a particular issue on Tumblr, a hyper-progressive website that was popular in the early to mid-2010s. These patients' testimony is consistent with what has been said by many detransitioners elsewhere, who have pointed out that in some digital echo chambers, being trans is very trendy and sometimes even seen as preferable to being LGBT. In many cases, Tavistock's patients struggled with internalised homophobia, which seemed to be driven by horrific homophobic bullying. Several clinicians reported that between patients and parents, homophobic comments were made at the clinic almost every day. Some boys who are gay would express revulsion towards their same-sex attraction and talk about wanting to have sex the normal way, so straight. One patient who, according to Barnes' reporting, spent years being told by classmates that he was gay filth, was put on hormone blockers that only worsened his mental health. No attention was given to his sexual orientation or bullying. The patient eventually accepted himself as a proud gay man after his mother removed him from affirming care. The mother told Barnes that it doesn't take a genius to see that when a boy is severely bullied and called gay filth, gay dirt, gay pedo at school for years, you may end up with a child who's so traumatised by being gay that it might be influencing his identity. Young female patients would also express revulsion at the thought of being lesbians. According to, I can't pronounce that name, a former Tavistock clinician, homophobia was everywhere. Young women would tell him, when I hear the word lesbian, I cringe, I want to die, I'm going to vomit if I hear the word lesbian another time. So, it's a long article, but I'm going to stop there. You see what I mean. So, you're no ally if you support kids being trans like this. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
I just have a brief one.
Thank you, Edie. I don't know about you, but I was today years old when I found out that skinheads, who used to be right-wing extremists walking around the street, are now weird old people who wear top buttons and suspenders.
At least we're not Nazis.
They're clowns for the state government. Spend time with the Fentimen, kids. Go on. You're Fentimen's little workers. You go and do for the state. You bow to the state. Go on. Let me read to you from the state legislation. This is what the speech is going to be forbidden by people. I'm just telling you what the legislation says. Now I'm reading you from the explanatory notes of the new Birth, Deaths and Marriages Registration Bill of 2022 that is being entered into our Parliament now. Now, the bill talks about sex descriptors. It replaces the observation of sex at birth with sex descriptors that can be used from birth, but also, I'll read from the bill now, the bill allows a person to register a sex descriptor of male, female, or any other descriptor of a sex. They must have found the third gamut because I don't know what that is. Some of the more common descriptors which may be nominated include agender, genderqueer, and non-binary. However, the registrar will be required to refuse the application if the descriptor is a prohibited sex descriptor. So now, who defines sex in Queensland now? It's these bastards. These bastards are defining sex. They now distribute sex as a product that is given by the government. That's a redefinition of sex in law without any. Did we have a referendum?
No.
Did anyone vote on this?
No.
That maybe we said, oh, please government, please change the names of all the sexes and give us genderqueer as an option so we can have a special genderqueer bathroom. I don't think that happened. Schedule 2 defines this to be sex descriptor. So what you can have the sex descriptors that they say, but the ones you can't have are ones that are absurd, obscene, or offensive. Now, I think it's offensive when a grown man walks into the registrar and says he's a woman and wants to undress in front of my children. That, to me, is offensive. But not to the Queensland government. They don't think that's absurd or offensive. Absurd, obscene, or offensive that could not practically be established by repute or usage. So, you know, this is just, it's all subjective. It's all the government saying, oh, you can be male, female, genderqueer, or whatever, but only if we say so. Once they say that there are conditions upon it, that just takes the entire process away from the biology. It doesn't put it in the hands of trans people. It puts it in the hands of the government, who invent a special group of people that are supposed to be so oppressed that they need these special sex descriptors in the law. This is corruption. It's fascism. These are the fascists. Our government has been taken over by fascists. And shame on them. Shame on you bastards.
I was going to read something out, but I haven't got it. I'll go next.
Go next.
After someone else.
Okay. We all know I'm a show pony, so I don't mind getting up again. I forgot my plumage in my hat. I will be putting said plumage in when I get suffragette coloured feathers. Okay, before I hand this mic over to somebody else, I'm just going to have a little giggle that alternative and punk nowadays is not just dressing with spiky hair or the clothes you wear. Punk is nowadays knowing what a fucking woman is. That is punk. Because we know our coffee shops like the one with the mermaid on it, what is that called? Anyone remind me? Or Subway, all those coffee shops, McDonald's, Coles and Woolies, they all promote this. So when you promote this and you dress all punk, you're actually promoting the status quo. There ain't nothing alternative about your lifestyle when you promote an ideology that's promoted by Starbucks. Let's just put that straight out there.
Okay, I'm just going to read out something, someone from Hobart. I'm not going to identify them, they want to remain anonymous, but she went to the rally in Hobart and these are her thoughts. She says, enough is enough. I went to the rally, not over it. I came to stand with women, for children. I want our rights reinstated. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the movie The Suffragettes. You can hire it on YouTube for $5 for 48 hours. If you're a woman and have never seen this movie, I encourage you to watch it. It's the beginning of what I'm on about here. I don't usually go to protests. In fact, I've been to one in my life. This day, I didn't see it as a protest at all though. It was a Let Women Speak gathering. I thought I was able to attend this, listen to other women, and if so, and as I had actually prepared, speak myself. On the way there, I was only concerned for how my speaking out in public might affect my job. I never for 1 second thought I'd be in physical danger. Within 5 minutes, I realised how wrong I was. There were 15 to 20 police officers around me, but they weren't there for me. A woman next to me begged an officer to help us as we were being literally impounded by the Tras mob. The officer yelled at her, "What do you want me to do?" There was one of me and 10 of them. I texted my ex-partner, the biggest man I know, to come and help me. Unfortunately, he didn't get there until after the event. This was all within the first 5 minutes of being there. I was there for 1.5 hours. I had no way of leaving. I had stupidly gone to this gathering by myself. A kind woman saw that I was scared, shaking, and when I spoke with her, she urged me to go and stand near her husband for protection. Thank you, Louise Elliott. We all know who Louise Elliott is. We even moved away from the mob to just get a space where we could listen and talk. They followed us and the police let them. The police let this happen. I watched it live, but I also filmed it, as did many others. We were all intensely abused. 1.5 hours of being hated on, called Nazis, transphobes, screamed at, pushed, shoved, unable to speak, unable to hear each other, and the police allowed this. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am a survivor of rape and childhood sexual assault. I am a survivor of suicide. I believe women have the right to their own female spaces, to not have men in their crisis centres to feel safe. And I 100% believe that children cannot make life-changing decisions before the age of 25. Right on, I've lost. Here I go. However, in our society, it's 18. You have to be 18 to drink, to get a tattoo, to get a loan. But you only have to be 10, 11 to change your identity at school and your parents not be told. This is wrong. This is ruining families. This is ruining society. In Tasmania, as follows Victoria, if you do not affirm your child's view of gender, their view of being the opposite sex, you are up for a $200,000 fine and a 10-year prison sentence. Look it up. It's real, it's happening, it's now. I do not view myself as anti-anything except anti-violence. What I experienced at the rally the other day was 100% intimidation. There was some violence I saw, yes, physical assaults towards other and much verbal assault. And again, Tasmania Police allowed this. I would like to make a distinction here between violence and intimidation. As I said above, I am a survivor of domestic violence. When I say violence, I mean violence. I mean my fractured ribs. I mean my black eyes. I mean my bruised body. I do not mean my hurt feelings. There is a huge distinction between the two. Just ask anyone who was a survivor of domestic violence. It's been said that the Tras get all, or the trans activists get all the rights, all the protections. And I'm right there in believing this to be the truth. Where were the 15, 20 police officers when my daughter was assaulted, leaving her needing reconstructive surgery on her face? Where were they? Oh, that's right. They were there in front of my face telling each other, which she caught on film, that they'll leave that part out of my daughter's statement. Oh yes, they were there having her go to the police station for photos for the next 3 days in a row when she was totally traumatised. But hey, we'll leave that bit out of the court hearing. We just forgot to tell her about her abuser who has left her completely and forever disabled in life now, that he was out and about months ago. And we'll just try and placate her mother, tell her she was overreacting, even though she is the one looking at the CT scan, the photos, and looking at the emails from the officers involved. The corruption is hard to look away from. And my government thinks I'm okay with allowing a law that allows this person to self-ID to the point where if she saw him down the street and wanted to escape, he could lawfully enter the same space and do it again. So has nowhere to go. I'm sure she's not the only one. In the assault that I am speaking of, my daughter's eye socket, amidst other bones, was broken. The doctor I took her to explained it to us. She was hit so hard that her eyeball protruded back into her skull. The pressure of the eyeball coming back out is what fractured the bone. Tell me, government, tell me, trans person, tell me, man, tell me, anyone, come and tell this mother to her face that it's okay to put my daughter's perpetrator in her safe places. That's it. Next.
Hello.
Hello. There you go.
Hello, friends. So, I've got my notes here, but I'm not sure if I will fold them out or not. Essentially, I came to this movement because I was shocked and appalled at how our girls were expected to be treated in the sporting field. Growing up, I was a swimmer in central Queensland, and thankfully, every time that I strapped on an extra 2 sports bras underneath my swimsuit, my parents never thought, oh, maybe we should chop off her tits because she feels so uncomfortable having her body as she grows. It frightens me that we are allowing these freaks over here are happy to have boys take our girls' swimming spots very comfortably, not knowing the grueling training schedule that these people go through in order to achieve the very highest. I was thrilled when Swimming Australia stood up and said, no, boys will not participate in our girls' races, only to think of the unintended consequence that if you couldn't go through a boy's puberty and then be considered in the women's swimming team, that perhaps we'll just be forcing these children into medicalisation at an early age. This needs to stop, it's foul. The other thing I'd like to add is because of my interest in women's wellbeing and that stem from sports and participation in civil life, I spent 10 years at this institution over here. My parents always wanted me to do something with my life. I'm not sure if they're particularly proud of that now that I seeing the way that the institution has fallen so deeply. But in that period of time, I wrote a thesis called the Consumption Values and Responsive Australian Women's Wellbeing, looking at the public policy that appeals to women's wellbeing. It sickens me now that the policy mechanisms that I examined are no longer considered as the most important things from a preventative healthcare position, because our very own Office for Women will prefer to include some kind of gender ideology bullshit as the primary funding mechanism behind anything to do with women's wellbeing. When I walk into my institution now, mind you, I came from the School of Economics, so rational thinkers, so to speak. And my thesis, because it was called Women in the period of 2018 to 2022, something changed and I needed to require a footnote in the opening chapter of my thesis as to what I actually meant by Australian women. My supervisor stood by me and argued the ridiculousness of that, only now to be proudly wearing the rainbow lanyard and a be kind attitude for everyone who is now in that school. How quickly rational thinkers change. I imagine it's because they see no harm in being kind to people. But it all stems, if you do a full circle back to these academic institutions, these people in power encouraging a be kind attitude, and what that ends up meaning for the girl at the racetrack competing against a bulking man who's gone through some kind of puberty in community sports, because we're not regulating against that yet. I'll continue this fight. These weirdos over here won't stop me. They just make me feel compelled to be even louder. You will not change the way what we think about these things. Since last month, a bigger part of the month before, I think there's double the people here. So good luck to you.
Okay, lovely ladies and women. Have we got any ball that's gonna come on?
I haven't prepared anything, so I'll be saying a lot.
it has always confounded me that anyone could actually say that trans women are women. It just has never made any sense to me. I include my own children who say that as well. I have 4 daughters in their 20s and early 30s who think I am insane for saying that trans women are not women, and they think I'm even despicable for even thinking that. I've just finished reading Kathleen Stock's book, Material Girls, which is a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. And in there, she actually hypothesised that people who say this don't actually believe it. Somewhere in the back of their mind, they know full well that this is nonsense, but they are immersed in the fiction because they like to be there. They perceive themselves as kind and inclusive and, most importantly, empathetic. So they're quite happy to stay immersed in this fiction. And she compares it to if you're watching a movie or a play, you get very involved and you know full well that what you're seeing isn't real. Those people are actors, but you get emotional and you enjoy it, but you know that it's not real. And you pull yourself out of that immersion and get on with your real life. So it does give me hope that one day my children will pull themselves out of their fiction and will no longer think of me as insane or my thoughts as despicable. That's it. Thank you.
What's up, Turfs?
Hey, what's up, Jack?
I want to talk today about one idea and one question, and that is, well, I think it's overlooked and it's not given the due consideration and respect that it deserves. And that is, what is transgenderism and is it real? Now I'm going to harp on this a bit because I think we underestimate just how important this question is, because the whole ideology is founded on this definition of transgenderism. And we don't talk about it enough. If you're a TERF or somebody that's just been down the rabbit hole, chances are you know a lot about gender ideology. You probably know about chromosomes. You probably know about large and small gametes and the respective sex-based developmental pathways that come with them. You'll know what an autogonophile is. You'll know what rapid onset gender dysphoria is, and that it's a peer social contagion and a maladaptive coping strategy. You will, you will know about false equivalencies, appeals to emotion, appeals to empathy traps. You'll know that the demographics or the demographic profiles for male and female representation for transgenderism is vastly different. You know that young women, it occurs in a homogeneous cluster outbreaks for young women only, but not for adult men. We'll know, and we'll talk about all of this, but what we don't know is a precise definition of what transgenderism is. Now, in a book, Think Again, the author and psychologist, he talks about society's most successful thinkers, and he says or argues that they're not academics or scientists or financially successful people or those with the most or the highest IQ. They're those with the ability to rethink or audit their beliefs. And I think that's what we need to do in regards to our belief about transgenderism. What is it? What is the claim? I know a lot of good TERFs that will fall prey to the true trans fallacy. You know, they'll say, how are we supposed to differentiate between an autogonophile and a true trans person? I don't think that's a problem. I think that's a trap. That presupposes that transgenderism is real and says the problem is that we need to be able to differentiate between AGPs and true trans. The real problem is autogonophilia itself, rapid onset gender dysphoria itself. And it's not knowing precisely what transgenderism is. The real problem is the erasure of sex-based rights. So, debate bros online will talk about this concept of steel manning your opponent's argument, which is trying to represent it in good faith and intellectually honest fashion. And that's what I want to do today about the definition of transgenderism and is it real? And that's what I think we should all go through the exercise of doing. So, for me, I thought about this for a bit, and I break it down into 3 categories. And that is, it is self-reported, that's the first part, faith-based claim, second part, that you have a gendered soul or an entity that is born in the wrong body.
Where are all the right bodies?
We're all the right bodies.
No,
But-
without a big suit.
But what we need to realise is how significant this definition is. All that stuff I talked about, third spaces, chromosomes, it all rests on this definition of what is transgenderism and is it real. If you cannot unconditionally answer yes to it's real, then why are we arguing about third spaces and identification and identity? None of it really matters unless we can say, yes, transgenderism is unconditionally real.
Yes, transgenderism is unconditionally real.
So if we start off, I want to dissect those 3 categories in good faith. So we have self-reported. Now self-reported, a proxy for self-reported, what radical gender extremists will use is self-identified. I prefer self-declaration, but a data scientist would use self-reported, so we'll go with that. But I want to talk about self-identification or self-identified is a misnomer because it implies a correct categorization.
Yeah.
Transgenderism is not a real category, so it cannot be correctly identified and certainly not by the self. Radical gender extremists will love to appeal to authority when it suits them. They'll say, you ask them what's a woman? They'll say, oh, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a biologist, I can't answer that. When we use our eyes and say that man wearing a dress is a man, they'll say, how do you know? You don't have a PhD in biology. Show me 5 peer-reviewed studies. Why do we appeal to authority in some context, but not the context of self-identification? Now, another point I want to make about self-identification, or self-reporting I should say, in a book, Dataclysm, the author is a data scientist and founder of OkCupid, the longest running dating website in America, and he has a lot of interesting insights about behaviour, dating preferences, sexuality. And he has one of the largest data sets to draw on. He talks about data categories in three broad categories, and he calls it observed, unobserved, and self-reported. So observed behaviour would be, an example of his book would be stated preferences. So a man would say, this is the age of the partner that I'm looking for. But that's not as robust, that's subject to bias. It's not as accurate as unobserved behaviour, which is what he describes as how you behave when you think nobody's looking. So unobserved behaviour in the same context would be the age of the profile that the man actually looks at and how long he looks at them for. And they're different. But the least robust and the most useless and worthless is self-reported. In the context of his book, he did a meta-analysis, and the example he used was for bisexuality, self-reporting. So for men, over 20 years, aggregate data, he found that only 5% of men that self-reported to be bisexual messaged both sexes. So the mechanism of self-reporting, in the context of bisexuality, 95% of men were liars. So why are we expected to believe that the mechanism of self-reporting doesn't work for bisexuality, but it will work for transgenderism? Last time I looked, we got both letters are in the LGBT. So it's completely useless for the B, but we're supposed to believe that it's accurate and worthwhile for the T. We just believe men, because men in dresses are just so reputable. They're paragons of virtue, bastions of propriety. Us TERFs may have just been born yesterday, but we stayed up all night. So, for the first part, self-reported, it's not looking so good. On to the second part, which is faith-based claim. This is fair, it's a faith-based claim. Nobody can dispute this. So, we have a lot of science worshippers these days. You know, we need a peer-reviewed study, show me some definitions, everything's about science. There's a little thing called the scientific method, and for something to be considered scientifically valid, it must be observable, falsifiable, and recreatable. Transgenderism does not satisfy a single one of those criteria. Why? In the context of homosexuality, so in some cultures, being gay may be considered shameful. So you may have an example of a man that's married with kids, that's cheating on his wife and having sex with men. Then, even though he says he's straight, it doesn't matter. The last category, a gendered soul or entity that is born in the wrong body. Now, they will actually use a gendered soul. So this presupposes that we must believe in souls to begin with. But interesting thing you will notice as well is, you know, it's such an absurd proposition, a gendered soul born in the wrong body, that some institutions, they won't use it, they'll use doublespeak. And they'll say instead, have a look at the language, and they'll say, somebody with a profound sense of unknowing or disconnect. You know, but it all amounts to the same thing. It is basically a separation from the mind and the body, some sort of identity that is different. The mind is not separate from the body. In the same way that strength cannot be divorced from health, the mind cannot be divorced from the body. This needs us to have a Cartesian sense of dualism, that the two are separate, the mind and the body, but they are not. There's a TERF by the name of Eggs-Lancet that makes a great point. And she talks about brain injury, traumatic brain injury, and she says that, for examples, language is a social construct, and supposedly gender is a social construct. Yet, for the brain, there's areas of the brain that are responsible for different function, for recognizing faces, for interpreting language. Yet, if somebody has a traumatic brain injury, they can be developmentally disabled or impaired in their cognitive ability to process language. If transgenderism is real, why is there no part in the brain responsible for interpreting it? Why is it not subject to developmental disability? Because it is not real. So, in closing, I just want to say, I think what we should do is audit our beliefs and ask ourselves, what is the foundational claim of transgenderism, and is it real? Because we need to realize how significant this question and definition is. Thank you.
Hey, I haven't really prepared anything. I was just going to speak off the cuff, and I could splinter into 1,000 different directions right now because this argument is all-encompassing. It has set fire to half of our dictionary and the foundations of all our understanding of how the world works. So it's easy to just roll the dice, pick a topic, and point out some collisions there. Today's a little bit interesting because we have a rainbow flag parading around behind us, and that flag used to, well, part of it at least, used to represent everybody. It was used for gay rights and the gay pride parades of the 1970s and 80s. I lived through some of the worst homophobia stuff back in the 90s. Maybe it wasn't as bad, I didn't get beaten to death, but the Matthew Shepard incident happened in 1996. This kid was met in a gay club, lured outside by some straight guys, and then crucified on a barbed wire fence. I know what it's like to live in fear of being found out of being gay. It's not pleasant. I can give you the shortest summary in the world. It's not very nice. But I can remember going back to when I was when I first came to Brisbane, I was sent to a private boarding school, all boys, and the worst thing in the world that you could be to lose all social credit was to be called gay. And I know what that was like, and I remember quite vividly the music that was in the charts at the time. I can remember Guns N' Roses' Lies, that album was out, and it had lyrics in it like immigrants and faggots, they make no sense to me. That was a few years after Dire Straits and their #1 hit, the little faggot with the earring and the makeup. Yeah, buddy, that's his own hair. That little faggot's got his own jet airplane. That little faggot, he's a millionaire. Money for nothing. Yeah, that was a #1 song. So the wallpaper in the background of society, it was very, very clear that being gay was the worst thing in the world. And I lived through that, and I still carry a lot of that baggage, so I've got a lot of internalized homophobia, and I know what that conflict is like. But I do know that, you know, the tiny divide we have here, there's that flag over there. I like to think that people on this side kind of get it, and I don't detect an awful lot of homophobia on this side of the fence. Weirdly, that flag is now one of the most homophobic symbols out there. And I tried to have a discussion with one of these skinheads before, who are a pro-gay rights, pro-LGBT skinhead. I'm so confused trying to wrap my head around that. But I tried to have a little conversation there before, and I was given basically the gay 2.0 talking points. We accept everybody, you guys must hate certain minority groups, so therefore we're on the right side of history and we have some moral superiority and a flag to wave, and we're going to try and make you feel bad. Guess what? You have no moral high ground whatsoever. Like, genuine homosexuals don't want to be erased by this Trojan horse that the T is. Thanks very much. I feel so that you have no idea why you're over there and why you're wearing that flag. I don't think you guys know what you stand for, and that's okay, because our media has failed us so spectacularly. It really sucks that we are doing the job of what ABC should be doing, but they're too captured to actually have these conversations. We want to chase all of this stuff back to language and its meanings, ideas and their origins, trans when it was invented, non-binary when it was invented. You have to know names like John Money and Jamie Shoup. You have to know where this stuff comes from so you can go, hang on a sec, does that actually make sense? No. Do you want to just examine some of that? Because weirdly, before SBS got captured, it was about 20 years ago, I watched a documentary about, it was about John Money, and it was about David Reimer, and that poor kid who, through some failed operation, had his penis removed, and through the logic of John Money, was told that, don't worry, all kids are a blank slate. We can just raise your son, who's now lost his genitals, as a girl. It'll work out fine. This experiment ran for quite some time. People are still referring to it. I watched this documentary on SBS back before it was captured, and it highlighted the horrors and the evil pseudoscience, that the logic just wasn't there. And before David Reimer killed himself, he made sure to be... He found out that this documentary was being made. He found out that John Money was still being hailed as some sort of success story. He managed to, in his own words, highlight what a hell he had been through and what a horrendous experiment it was, how gender and our sense of sex roles, to a large degree, is innate. It's built into us. We are born as we are born. Nobody's born in the wrong body. All of this stuff needs to be said, but SBS has failed so spectacularly, and to be doing it thinking they have any kind of moral superiority makes me sick. Yeah, it's a mess. I look for this to clean up. This shouldn't be my job on a Sunday. This is what the media is supposed to do, but hey, thanks for listening.
Okay, a little story about myself and how I used to love to go see bands in the Brisbane area, and I would love to go to places like the Zoo, and I would love to go to other places because I don't mind me some heavy metal, I don't mind me some punk. And do you know what stopped me from going to local gigs? This is before COVID. I literally had to stop, and the reason why is because I'm 5'1". I am a short ass. I look a little taller because I've got my hat on, I know. But don't be fooled by the illusion of what the witch's hat gives. I'm a short ass. And most of my clothes, because I do like a skirt, I do like a bit of a dress, and I have to get on my sewing machine and adjust my height on my clothes because I'm a short ass. And you know why I had to stop going to the Zoo? I mean, I love me some 4ZZZ, don't get me wrong. I still listen to it, but I cannot go to a local gig anymore. Because I turn into a human fucking mop. Because there are men in dresses, and I don't have a problem with what you wear at 4ZZZ gig. I don't care what you wear at the fucking Zoo. But I do have a problem when you walk in there with your penis someone's dropped a beer at the gig, hey? Yeah, you think someone's dropped a beer and you've just mopped up someone's beer, but no. You go to your husband, what the fuck is that smell? What is it? And he comes back and he says, oh shit, honey, I think you've mopped up someone's pee. Well, get out! I go to the women's bathrooms. I shouldn't be having to deal with someone's urine on the ground in a fucking venue. What the hell? So they say they're women, but they won't sit to pee? What the hell? So then we go out to the real world. Hey, with your mum, you got your little ones, and you go squeeze into that goddamn cubicle with the toddler. And next thing your toddler's on the ground, and I think I've said this before, but I think a lot of people miss this. Now that toddler's put their hands in some guy's urine, because if I remember correctly, when we were talking about women not being able to actually flush unless they, women actually sit to pee. We don't pee on seats. We don't pee on the toilet seat. We don't pee all over the goddamn ground. So I'm a woman, I'm an adult human female. I'm not a human fucking mop for fucking gigs in Brisbane's scene because men in dresses just go in and out. And I can't enjoy an event anymore because I will not, and I refuse to, go anywhere where I have to wade through men's waste on the ground just to enjoy a fucking local band. And on that, I love you for now. We'll talk to you later. Remember, stay loud, my friends, because there's nothing more punk than a woman that knows what a freaking woman is. Stay loud.
Hey, can you quickly...
Just before we go, I've got to take a little baby megaphone here. Thank you to the Brisbane Police. They've done an amazing job today. Thank you so much. It could have been a lot worse if the other group didn't cancel because they were referred to as something they didn't like. But Brisbane Police, thank you. Big cheers.
Well done. That was really good.
No, I haven't. Bye, guys. See you, FEMA. See you, Kiki. I'll see you soon, Kiki. See you, VF. Mwah. Love yous. Bye, guys. Sorry, I won't do. Sorry, I won't do that. Bye. What am I doing? Danielle's, she's here. I can't work out how to turn this off.